right. First of all, I'm joined by Ethan Lake. Where are you from?
Well, I say I'm from here, American Samoa. I was actually born in Hawaii. After I was born in Hawaii, because my parents, my mom is Samoan. My dad's from the States, from beautiful state of Iowa. We moved around.
Good Midwest state.
Moved around quite a bit when I was younger, because he was in the Marines when he met my mom in Hawaii. And eventually settled back down in Iowa. So I grew up in Iowa. My younger years went through school all the way up until 9th grade in Iowa. After my parents had divorced, then I moved back to Hawaii with my mom, and so I was able to go to high school in Hawaii, back to kind of the Pacific. So after that, got into the military, Air Force, and eventually ended up back here in American Samoa after all the years. I think a lot of Samoans are called back to the island, either through parents or combination of the spirits and everything else saying, come back and give back.
Excellent. And how did you get exposed to fencing?
Well, it was several years ago. I was at the time the sports commissioner for Jonathan Faneni, who's the director, but for the government. When the governor, this current governor, who when he went his first term, approached me because I was always volunteering for a lot of sports, and he asked me to be the sports commissioner for the territory for the first one. And in that role, one of the things I was trying to do, and I was asked to do, is trying to find ways through sports to get more of our younger athletes, student athletes per se, to secondary education, to colleges. And so looking at other sports programs, not just American football, but looking at others. And that's where I was first introduced myself into fencing. And that's when I met Helen at one of the conferences for ONAC. And we had talked. And I said, I think fencing would be great here. And the first person I thought of that would want to do fencing was Irene, and it's working out perfectly.
And who is Irene?
She's as the president, but also as my wife. So
Miss Irene K.
Yes, the most beautiful woman on the island. So
I will have to agree with you there. So not that you're not biased, and I'm biased too now. So what's your current role with fencing and in sport?
Well, right now I'm one of the board of directors for fencing, and I'm also the treasurer. But my larger role too, that also helps, not only helps fencing, but helps all the sports, is I was elected last year, about a year ago, as the Secretary General for the American Samoa National Olympic Committee. So I've taken that role on, yes, and it's been great actually. It's offered opportunities to help build sports such as fencing in an area that is very unique. I mean, again, when you look at the Oceania, there's not many countries that have fencing yet. But we hope to change that. And thanks to Oceania, Helen, thanks to Leon, and definitely thanks to you and Donald and Celso, I believe there's a lot of potential for the Pacific Islands. As you had mentioned too, we're apt to being very athletic people in the Pacific. And you expose us to any sport, fencing one of them. I think we just catch on, definitely, and it's a sport that we can definitely excel in. Especially combat sports, we tend to be very good at that.
That's a good thing. You need that for fencing.
In the future, there's going to be a fourth category called machetes or something.
Okay. Shorter blade.
Yes.
So we've been here for a week, and we've had a chance to see your development and how you're moving along. I guess do two things. One, tell me where you think you are currently and your vision for where you would like to go.
Well, honestly, I still see us at the grassroots level, the beginning stages, but I see that will always continue, because I think in order to continue any sport, you need to maintain the grassroots, because that's what we call your feeder programs. If you don't continue the grassroots and you over-focus only on your elite athletes, then you may miss out on the potential of who's out there. So I see us at the grassroots, but only because we needed to get the full membership. We needed a lot of things, and things take time. Patience is a virtue, and I think we've had that. But I see us excelling quite rapidly, like the president said. And I don't think it's too far to say 2 years where we could actually be on the world stage of people knowing that there's actually fencing in American Samoa. And I like us as neighbors and as really uniqueness of the United States and American Samoa. I'd like to see us up there with the United States one day in the future, but it's going to take some time. it is a goal of 2 years of, just to be noticed and be up there. But like any sport, it does take time to actually get, and sustain that for over a period of time. So there's definitely a long trek ahead of us to work on that.
Yeah, well, you got a lot of solid momentum going. Leon Thomas and the three of you guys work really very closely, and I can see the impact. Some of the students were really amazing at how much they picked up in 4 or 5 lessons and classes. What do you think it's going to take for you to get to that vision that you just sort of articulated?
To be honest, and it's not just the fencing, and again, as Secretary General, I have to have that hat on all the time as well, too. One thing I see for most of the sports programs, but definitely fencing, is outside investment, outside commitment to assist in developing countries. There's a tendency, and for many of the sports are what I call Euro-centered, and fencing has got its own kind of background in that, just like many of the other sports. I mean, a lot of them come with background to Europe. But what I've seen in some sports, like FIFA as an example, is not to only focus on that 1%, those gold medalists. Yeah. That international federations, any sports program, if they want to succeed and they want to grow, they need to be looking at the 99%. And that's the ones that may never medal. We're only 55,000 people. We don't need a whole lot of assistance, but we definitely need it. We need those who consider us and say, hey, we're going to help pick you up. If we want the sport to grow and get stronger than others, we're competing. Fencing would be competing with literally hundreds of other sports. So it's about helping our own. And that's what I would ask for anybody out there is take a look at us, build one territory, one country, one nation at a time, and we will be there. We'll be stronger than ever.
Well, you hear them ringing the bell and trying to get us out of here. You got anything else that you'd like to add before we sign off? I
just want to say thank you. Again, Donald, Celso, Helen, Leon, everyone who's made this possible, the International Fencing Federation as well, too, for having you guys come down here. Because as Irene has said, it's very rare to have executives come down, but we're always inviting them because they need to see the challenges we have. We can explain it over the phone or over emails. You got to be here in person to really understand it, really get the feel of it and say, wow, these guys are really passionate. They're very committed down here. They want it, but they need outside assistance. They need people to see the big picture and say, listen, we're willing to work together at this because that's how we grow. And so I just want to thank everyone who made this possible for coming down. Most importantly, though, I want to thank Irene because as president, when I heard about fencing, and she was the first one that came to mind, and sure enough, she's really taken it. And as she said this morning as we were coming, she was, oh, I love fencing. Now, coming from someone who's involved in other sports and other programs and stuff, and fencing still, the last couple of years is new to her as well as it is to me. That's a good reassuring sign. And I know that fencing is in great hands with her at the helm. And I want to thank her for making all this possible. She's the one that organized everything. I've really, as Secretary General, too, is taken the back seat, let her lead, and she's been leading very greatly. So I see us making it to Olympics someday in the future. Well, thank you. You got your challenges, but you got so many opportunities and so much talent and passion to work with. So I want to appreciate you joining me, Ethan. Leon, appreciate that. So I'm going to just go through a couple of things with you. First and foremost, just to get a little bit of your background. Where are you from these days?
I'm from Adelaide in Australia.
And where are you originally from?
I'm from Sydney, Australia.
So you're a serious Aussie from down under.
What we call a currency lad.
Currency lad. So how did you get exposed to fencing?
At a very young age. I come from a sporting background. My father and my elder brother played sports, pretty good at the traditional sports. My father made me an offer I couldn't refuse when I was 8 years old, which is, what sport would you like to play? And our neighbours at the time had one of their kids, who was the same age as my elder brothers, was a fencer. So I pulled up for fencing. I've always loved sort of the swashbuckling movies and sword fights on TV and, books about swords and stuff. So it was a natural choice.
So you're just a natural, passionate addict to the sport, huh?
Probably was a fencer in a past life or died in a duel or something like that. But, I've always had an affinity with the blade, and that hasn't ended.
So how long have you been involved in the sport?
I started in 1965. went off to my first lessons individual in foil as a junior. I think I had a break in about 1982 when I transitioned from trying to be an international fencer to just coming back home. And I had about 6 months off then, but ever since then, it's been pretty much a continuous thing.
So give me just the sort of the Cliff Notes current version of your fencing competitive career.
Fencing competitive career, I've represented 2 states in Australia I think in all weapons. For New South Wales, I represented in foil, epee and sabre as a junior and as an open fencer. I've represented South Australia in foil and epee. I've represented Australia at 4 World Championships and 2 Commonwealth Championships. I won 2 Australian national competitions. What else can I say? That all finished in 82 when I stopped going overseas in fencing. I fenced for another 10 years just as a coach fencer. And ever since 1989, I've been a coach.
All right. So you've been a coach since 89, and what is your current role?
My current role is I work for the Oceania Fencing Confederation as their Regional Development Officer.
And what does that entail?
Pretty much going to countries that we're trying to get fencing kicked off in and doing programs and education, just teaching people what fencing is, how to fence, also how to coach, and just assisting them with the development of their sport.
So tell me a little bit about why we're here and what have you been doing in American Samoa?
Okay, American Samoa has been on the hit list, I suppose, for quite some time. My boss, the president of the Oceania Confederation, made contact with the folks here who are handling it.
And who is that person that you...
That would be Irene Kane and also Ethan. I think the initial contact was with Irene.
Okay, and that was Helen who made the...
Helen made the contact through her various networks. She attends a lot of meetings to do with the NOCs and also national federations of various sports throughout the Pacific. She's been quite active in that area, and I think one of the missions in Helen's life is to push along a new confederation out here in Oceania.
Oh, that's very cool.
Okay.
So now, tell me about how that's been progressing. I know this isn't your first time here, so...
I came here about 18 months ago, maybe a bit longer. It was in 2016. After Helen made the initial contact with Irene, we arranged for me to come out here with some plastic swords and a little bit of, this is what a foil, an epee and a sabre looks like. I came out here for about a week, did some school programs and did some coach education with Irene. At that point we found that it was, they wanted to go further forward with it. Since then they've been working on their administrative side to get it set up so that they can move towards becoming a member of the FIE. That process came to fruition when the FIE agreed to send you, Donald, and Celso out here to do the investigative work. I came out to do a second set of programs. So I've been here working with you folks and also working in some schools, doing a few more tri-sessions, education programs. We've got a little group of fencers within the community who come in and we've been teaching them fencing. So, yeah, just the usual stuff.
So how many students have you actually exposed to fencing over the course of your stays here, would you say?
Well, from a tri-session point of view, where we just go out to a school, show them the equipment, give them the plastic foils and the musks and get them to fence, it would be easily 300.
Okay. Easily 300.
Yes, I'd say so.
Yeah, I think I had heard 500, so easily 300 is very...
Yeah, I mean, on the first day we did 120.
Yeah, and you've been here for 2 weeks.
Yeah, I've been, not quite 2 weeks. I was here for 4 or 5 days before you folks arrived.
Okay.
And then, in the meantime, since you've been here, so that's another 5 days. So I reckon 10 days. It's pretty close.
So the other thing that you've mentioned is you work with the Western Samoa Fencing Federation as well.
Yeah, that's a slightly older project. I've been visiting there since 2014, I think, was the first time I went out there. So I visited there on about 6 occasions, doing exactly the same thing, meeting with their people, helping them get started, teaching them a little bit about fencing, doing tri-sessions in schools, working with other fencers who have sort of come through the ranks from that, educating their coaches, and also we had, in 2016, we took a team of 8 fencers representing Samoa to the Oceania Cadets Championships.
That's pretty good.
They didn't do too badly. A couple of them pushed up into the last 16, and the feedback that we got from the other fencers and coaches within the tournament was that they thought they were okay, and also from my point of view, they didn't look too bad for their first time out, so it was good.
Good. Now, how, just sort of share your perspective with me on the development of both fencing in Oceania and also just how you see fencing developing globally right now.
Well, I think the two are in some ways the same subject. I like to think of it out here as Oceania is the last confederation area to be developed. Fencing's very well developed, of course, in Europe and in both Americas, both North and South America, especially Canada, the United States, and what have we got down in South America? Venezuela, Argentina. It's quite well developed there. Fencing's extremely well developed in Asia and very up and coming. When I was first fencing, I suppose back in the 70s, Asia was pretty much nowhere. Then all of a sudden they had a junior silver medal and it just exploded from there. Now Asia is, 3 of the Asian nations are amongst the top nations in fencing across the various weapons, China, Korea and Japan. Australia traditionally has been linked firstly with Asia, and that's still where we qualify for the Olympics, but Australia and New Zealand are attempting to take a leading role out here in the Pacific. It's not exactly a continental area, but it is a vast area, and like I say, it's the 5th ring. This is our last frontier.
Yeah. So, give me an idea of what you see the future for American Samoa fencing, from what you've seen so far.
Well, I think they've got a very bright future because the people who we've got working on it are very motivated. They've been involved in other Olympic sports and also been involved in their own Olympic committee. They've got a great vision and an idea where they're heading for. The young fencers that we've been exposed to so far are extremely enthusiastic. And we've even sort of found a few people that appear to be what we would call talented. And you've observed that too, Donald. There's a couple of fencers who are in our community group who are looking like they could really go a lot further, given coaching, practice and exposure to the world of fencing.
So, I've had a chance to, first of all, it's been a pleasure to meet you and spend time with you. You mentioned the community groups, the schools, Irene and Ethan, Irene being the president, Ethan being Secretary General of the National Olympic Committee. It feels as though they just have a ton of passion because they both come out of sports, both out of the wrestling world. They have that kind of potential to lead this federation into what could be a very solid competitor. What do you think? What else do you think it's going to take for them to get there?
Well, of course, they have to complete their recognition with the international body. They have to get some equipment out here, and we have to move a bit further, or quite a bit further forward with the coach education side. Fencers with talent is one thing, but they have to be guided. At this point, we've got past a very important point, having a very functional and supportive organisation for them in the American Samoa National Fencing Federation. But I think it's about recognition, exposure, and we just get some coaching happening here, either via my own program or if they find that they want to bring some other coaches in as well. I think that's where it's at, really. For people to be successful at fencing, they have to be well coached and well organised.
So I've had a chance to watch you work with some of these young fencers. Can you clone yourself? Because I mean, they could just like keep you here, and I could see it developing very quickly.
Well, it's very kind of you to say. I don't see it as anything special. I just do my job. I'm a coach, and I've coached at all levels, and I think that's part of it, is that I've worked in my own fencing career from a young age and gone up through all of the grades. Not hugely successful internationally, but I know my fencing, I know my coaching, and I've coached at all different levels, but I just see that as, well, isn't that what fencing coaches do, I suppose?
Yeah.
Well,
the good ones.
Well, I have a high expectation of that sort of thing with the other coaches around and about the place. It's a job that you have to do. That's what we've all been taught how to do by our mentors and our coaches who came before us. So, that's just what has to be done. But it's that complete knowledge, I guess. I'm lucky to have gone through all levels of the fencing world, and so, I bring my experience to bear.
So I'm going to go off on the other side of when we get to have these interesting experiences. What has it been like from the standpoint of the culture here, the people, and then, of course, you could have elaborate on our dinner last night, which was absolutely amazing.
It was truly, wasn't it? I don't know. I mean, the Samoan people, both here and in Western Samoa, are naturally athletic. I just think that's one of their attributes. They've had a history of being good at a number of sports in the past. I think one of the key things for them is that they are fast-learning people. It seems it's not unique, but it seems to be more the norm here. The Samoan people pick up and learn skills very, very quickly. It's one of the things they do, and they're a tall race of people, which is always good for fencing. They're strong, they're athletic. It's an equal and open society, so we've got access to both boys and girls fencing, which is always important.
Yeah, we saw some really good young girls, and I was just pretty amazed with how much they were able to pick up from just a technical perspective. Both the little ones, then when we saw Irene and two fencing, I mean, it wasn't like we were looking at beginners that had had 4 experiences with fencing.
Yeah, I think something that's helpful too out here is that they're not too sort of, how shall I say, they don't know too much before they actually gain knowledge. I'm sure it's the same in the States. In Australia, kids have 2 or 3 fencing lessons, and all of a sudden they're on YouTube and they're right into it and they know everything, and they're wanting to fence like world champions when they need to fence like beginners. But these folks here, they take it on board straight away, like as you've seen. Yeah. Some of these kids have been shown only the very basics of fencing, and they take to it straight away.
Well, I want to thank you for your time. And is there anything you want to add?
No, I think I'm just about done here. It's very nice to have met both you and Celso, although I know Celso from previous fencing lives. But it's been a pleasure to meet you, Donald, and just to be able to have that interchange between 2 people who love their fencing.
Thank you for listening to this edition of the Swordsport Podcast. The Swordsport Podcast is a production of Swordsport.tv and is produced and engineered by myself, Don Anthony, and Rick Lotzenheiser. We would like to give a special thank you to the King Arts Complex and their CEO, Demetrius Neely, for providing us a great space to work from in Columbus, Ohio. To subscribe to the Swordsport Podcast, check us out on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and YouTube.